Okay, we're
Awesome.
recording.
We are live.
Fish,
How you
welcome.
doing?
I'm good. Thank you. This is a good start. I like it. I'm laughing already.
Yeah, me too.
Let's um let's start talking about intention. Let's get right in.
All right.
So,
Well, intention gathering is a an intentional gathering, so to speak. It has a long history. I if you want me to tell the origin story of intention, I mean,
yeah,
might
I
as
was going
well.
to ask it. Let's start with that.
Okay. I was not there for this. I was still very new to raving and hadn't quite found these high vibration hippie ravers yet. I had been to a couple of very mainstream raves. I was 35. I looked older than most people, but I did enjoy the music. And in the late 90s, stuff was already happening in Vancouver already. And there was a tribe of people that didn't really have a name, but they all knew each other, and they were split between East Vancouver and the Sunshine Coast, and they were into some high vibration music and very peaceful people, and definitely wanting to do more than just take drugs and dance. They wanted a rave to be an experience. So they were already throwing parties that I didn't know about yet. And in the end of 1999, there was, of course, the Y2K issue. Some people thought that shit was going to go sideways. I was one of the programmers who fixed stuff so that it didn't go sideways, me and millions of other programmers. And luckily, as we all know, Y2K was an anticlimax. But what was going through the heads of these particular people was, well, if it really is the end of the world, or even if it isn't, we should be somewhere with the people we love the most, throwing a really fat party over New Year's. So they rented a kids' camp called Camp Sassamat, and they did a party, and there was about 80 of them, I believe, and apparently it was quite successful. So they kept it going. And the next year they moved to Camp Elphinstone on the Sunshine Coast. And around intention four, I guess, I was deeper into this community. I'd heard about intention three and almost went, but it was not able to be arranged. So I went to intention four, and at that point, we used to do these sort of town hall meetings that were also organizer meetings where anybody could show up if they were interested. So in, I guess, November or so, I went to a couple of these meetings because at that point I already knew enough about sound systems that I could be useful. I mean, I've been a musician all my life, right? And yeah, I went to this meeting and met some really cool people. It sounds like a cult, I know, but yeah, I went to this meeting and they were so lovey-dovey, and I was like, yeah, I want in on this event. So I ended up joining the organizing team for Intention 4, and that changed my life. Did it ever? Yeah, because I discovered there was lots of us out there, and some of them I already knew, and some were from the coast, and people just kept coming, and it grew and grew, as they say. By intention seven, I think we had maybe almost 300 people registered, which is bigger than the winter intention you went to. And well, that's the origin story. Then it just becomes one party after another. The group that was organizing this didn't even have a name at first, as I said, and then sometime in the very early aughts, they went to Gathering of the Tribes in California, and that was a sort of intentional festival conference organized by Moon Tribe, and they were supposed to put a name on their application as to the name of their tribe or group. So somebody just made up Tribal Harmonics, and the name stuck. So the group was called Tribal Harmonics. There was a website called tribalharmonics.org, but it wasn't an official organ of the group because they were barely organized. It was run by one person who had decided that they would provide this as a service. And it had forums. You remember before Facebook, they used to have forums? Yeah. So that was our tribal communication tool was probably PHPBB, I think it was written in. And yeah, conversations online like nobody had ever seen before. And eventually, of course, Facebook killed that. But at the time, it was very cool. So Tribal Harmonics got more and more organized. And I remember in about maybe 2006 or 7, there was a meeting where they were trying to decide if they would open a bank account and become a little more legit or if they were going to stay totally underground. And there were a few people from the coast that wanted to stay totally underground, but they realized that that wasn't going to happen. So they just politely withdrew and did their own thing. So we have lots of little splinter tribes and sister tribes all over the place, especially on the coast. But Tribal Harmonics as an entity became the people behind that event. And eventually, I think this would have been about 2010 or 11, maybe. The original wave of organizers was starting to burn out, and they were talking about doing one last winter intention. But there were some new people on the team, and I don't mean me because I wasn't new at that point, but new people who had lots of energy and wanted to keep it going. So Tribal Harmonics agreed to take the money out of the bank account and close it and hand it over to one of us, and we would reopen it as Intention Gathering. So we renamed ourselves after the one party that we were known for. And we have been Intention Gathering ever since. We're now a legal nonprofit. We have actual legitimacy. We're a real thing. We take it serious, yo.
Nice. I guess my first question is, actually, I have two. So one is, what are the values of intention gathering?
Mm.
And the second is, what is the difference with intention gathering now?
Oh, okay. Those are very good questions. I wish that I had my little cheat sheet here, because I can tell you what our values are not written down in a 10-pointer the way the Burning Man 10 principles are, but they really should be. And somebody did make an attempt to codify this to some degree as a little, it's kind of like a business card slash flyer that we've been had around for years, and I wish I had one right here. Can we stop? We'll be able to cut out 10 seconds of video if I run and get one? Because I know where one is, and I'll just read you the back of it.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, it's worth it, trust me. That was less than 10 seconds.
Boom.
Okay, so I'm probably going to see this reversed. Yeah, this is the front of the flyer, and it looks like a party flyer, but if you look real close, there's no actual event date on there, and that is because it was designed to be our generic flyer slash business card. And on the back is some text, which I will just read to you, or at least the relevant parts. Well, it's all relevant. I can talk fast. Here we go. Intention's main event is a 5-day, 4-night community-run festival where participants come together to dance, play, share, learn, perform, eat, and have fun together. Nights bring electronic music dance parties, and daytimes consist of workshops, music jams, a artisan market, and shared meals prepared in the community kitchen. Intention is organized entirely by volunteer organizers who are members of the community. All participants share their labor and talent out of love for the community. Intention evolved from the simple ritual of getting together to dance. Yes, it is a healing place to shed the isolation and separation of modern urban life. It is a safe and supportive space for learning and creative risk-taking. Intention deepens our ability to cooperate and open our hearts. It is a time and space for being authentically ourselves in a dynamic, loving, and inspirational community setting. Our aim is to co-create a safe container for rich creative exploration of music, art, and self-expression. Now, you've been to one of our gatherings. Does that sound reasonably accurate?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
it definitely felt like that to me. I
good.
was good.
That's what we try to do.
And how did that come about?
Well, you mean this particular text, or how did we become what we are today?
How did you become what you are today?
Oh. Well, on some levels, we've always been this. Like, I think about the vibe at Intention 4 and the winter intention that we just did. Intention 4 was 2002 to 2003. That was my first name. So 22 years later, last year would have, yeah, whatever. I don't think it's changed that much. We've gotten more organized, but in terms of the vibe that we project, and I mean, I'm not saying we have 10 principles because, we're not as organized as the Burners, but obviously we believe in dancing. We believe in cooperation or radical interdependence, as John Bean put it. We believe in keeping a family friendly space. It really does have to be family friendly. We also believe in supporting ravers on their own little voyage around the dance floor or whatever they want to do. We encourage people to take artistic steps that they've never done before. We have some DJs who have never played before a live audience until the year they came to Intention, and now they're superstars. At least in East Vancouver, they are. Uh, we have, let me see, I feel like I'm missing some really obvious values. Shared meals is a big one. Now, what this flyer actually, if we update that text, it says something about preparing shared meals in a community kitchen. When we do summer intention, we do prepare the meals ourselves. When we do winter intention, the only year that we ever did the cooking ourselves was the first year because Sassamat would allow that. But most camps, it's an insurance thing and a food safe thing. We're not allowed in the kitchen at all. So we design the menus and we give them to the camp staff. So we don't get to build the winter meals ourselves, but we get to eat them together. And yeah, having a shared mealtime where everybody is there is really important because when the gathering is large and scattered throughout a bunch of buildings, you might not see everybody all at once. Even on the dance floor, you might not. But at meal times, yeah, that's when you realize just how many people are here right now. And it's pretty fun, as you know. The question of what has changed, I mean, in some ways nothing, but in other ways everything, because the world has changed and we have evolved. I mean, we were the type of people that would have been the responsible ravers that would have had somebody on site who knew something about Psy Crisis, and we knew how to phone 911 and we were on top of that shit. But now, 20 years later, when we do a gathering in the woods, we have peer support, Psy Crisis, and actual full-on medical with licensed medical professionals who have their tickets. We have extensive medical kits. We had a defibrillator out in the woods at Summer Intention a month ago. They're only this big, but they're very expensive. The odds that we would even need one is very, very low. But that gathering was in a place that was probably about a 40-minute drive from the closest hospital. So there were certainly cases where if somebody didn't get there in time, that could, in theory, be very bad. So we're like, nope, nope, we're going to prepare for everything. Most of the time, our first aid staff ends up bandaging a few minor injuries. It's rare that we have anything serious, but when we do, we handle it like pros. And that would have been our intention 20 years ago, but I don't think we were quite organized enough to do that. But we definitely are now. For the last 10 years, we have had certified medical professionals running our own thing.
So I was interested about the organization. How is intention gathering organized?
Well, We have this kind of evolved over the years, but it's always been a case of you have a few people who are willing to throw down time and actually organize an event. Every last person who shows up is not on the organizing team. I think when it was smaller and very, very new, it might have been a little different. But even by the time I came along at Intention 4, there was very much the, well, we're all participants and we're all volunteers, but there is a core of like 10 or 15 people or 20 who are the organizing team for that event. And sometimes it's the same people from one event to the next. I've actually been on the org team for every event since I joined up because I'm obviously crazy and enjoy doing insane amounts of work for free. Um, I do the website, I do registration, I do some of the promo, and all of that's on top of my day job. But those of us who are driven to it will do it. It's what we call a duocracy. The people who are willing to put in the effort are the ones who get to make the decisions. So in theory, anybody can join the org team, and all we need is for them to show up to meetings and prove that they are actually willing to do something. Occasionally, we have organizers who will take on a very specific role on the condition that they don't have to come to any meetings. And we don't do that for just anyone. But the guy who does the kitchen at Summer Intention is a good example, or the guy who was pulling together the medical stuff. They don't have to be at every single planning meeting. There's usually 10 or 12 meetings leading up to one of the two big events, and they're a lot of work. And there are people who just know their role and check in with us once in a while, and they do it. But we have meetings, and we used to have a ridiculous number of emails. We were using Google Groups, and people always complain there's too many emails. And if people would use subject lines properly and start new threads when the subject changes, it would be fine. But it doesn't always work that way. So, Winter Intention, the one you went to, was a communications breakthrough for us because after talking about it for years, we went on to Slack instead of email. Some of us knew Slack from work. Some of us had never seen it before. I knew it obviously because I'm an IT guy, but yeah, and I think it's better. There were the same people who said, "Oh, there's too many emails," are now the people that say, "Oh, there's too many notifications." And it's like, yeah, I get it. And you are good at your job and you are good at showing up at meetings, but electronic communication is part of being on the org team, and we really hope that anyone who joins up is at least willing to read the important stuff, right? So yeah, there's no real rules to joining the org team. You basically just come up to the existing org and say I want in, and you're in. We used to have a sort of confusion between the organizing team from the last big event would kind of be the ones holding the reins for intention gathering as a whole until the next event, but there was no continuous leadership. And we did try doing something called the core, which was supposed to do that. They didn't end up getting a lot done, and it ended up creating more havoc than anything. So what we have now is an actual board of directors, and yes, I am on it, and John and Lola, and we have two other people waiting to join. And the board of directors, our job is to avoid getting in the way of event organizing as much as possible. Whoever is on the org team for that event has almost total control of what goes on. But because we're a nonprofit and we have a bank account and technically we have liability that we have to worry about, it does help if there's a sort of stable leadership. But honestly, we lead from being the hidden bureaucrats that most people don't even know exist. You could come to our gathering and you would have no idea whether there's a board of directors or just a bunch of hippies who came together and threw it. You can't tell, right? And that's good. That's a good thing.
How do you think the organizational structure and democracy lead to how people perceive the event as a whole?
Good question. Well, I mean, we try to give people the impression that yes, there are pods, which what we call departments or groups. Promo is a pod, website is a pod. There are pods and there are people, quote, in charge of these pods, but anybody can really contribute to the event in other ways. They don't necessarily have to join the org team. We also do have to have volunteer people to make things happen at these gatherings. Even if we're not doing our own food, there's still gate, there's still peer support, there's still first aid, there's a lot of volunteer shifts. So as you may have noticed, it's kind of become necessary that we get people to volunteer for a couple of shifts when they sign up and when they register. And it's not really optional. It's like if you have some other reason, sure, but really people do end up volunteering because it's kind of expected. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and towards a 4 or 5 day event, that's a drop in the bucket. And what that means is that people who had something to contribute but didn't have time to go to meetings may end up stepping up and being, you know what, I'm going to take on doing the blah blah. Like the altar building is something that sometimes gets missed till the last minute, and then somebody just comes and takes it on. And then they had a part in it too, without having to get as deeply involved as those of us who are worried about finance and promo. And if the opposite happens and somebody says, oh, the org team made all these bad decisions, then our reaction is usually, okay, if you have some good ideas, then join us next year. You think you can do better? That's great. Come join us and show us what you got. You know, there were people in the old days who used to grouse about the organizing team and then never help and just show up at gatherings and grouse over and over again. But that doesn't happen as much anymore. And yeah, people are either content to stay in the background, let somebody else lead, and just do their volunteer shift and have fun the rest of the time. That 90% of the people at the gathering are in that category, and that's great. That we want them to have a good time. And for the 10% of us who are deeper involved, it's like, well, we asked for this, we volunteered for this. It's a lot of work, but we obviously love it, or we wouldn't be doing it. So
Yeah. What do you
that
think
helps.
are some of the achievements that attention gathering has gained?
Becoming an actual nonprofit and not losing our shirt when things went sideways financially, because we do, the summer event doesn't happen every year, but it didn't come along until the winter one had been going for 7 years, I think. And the summer event can be harder because finding venues where you can throw an outdoor party and not have noise complaints is getting harder and harder. And of course, the number of small festivals and raves on an average summer weekend is way more than it was 20 years ago. Way more. So finding venues can be hard. And in 2017, I think, we definitely lost money because we had a venue in mind and we're putting time and money into promo and other expenses, and then the venue went sideways. It had been misnegotiated by somebody no longer on our org team. they were talking to somebody who was renting the land and not the landowner, and they knew that, but they told the rest of the team that they had talked to the landowner. And it also turns out that you need a permit to do that, and in the Fraser Valley, that is really hard to get because they don't like raves out there. The whole Fraser Valley Regional District, yes, you need a permit, but they make it impossible to get a permit. So between those two factors, we lost the venue, and sure, we lost money, but the point is we already had money in the bank account and could afford to lose money. We're not a nonprofit, but we do we are a nonprofit, but we do also like to have some money in the bank for expenses, but also for the unexpected. And we probably lost a bit of money on the last summer intention. Our promo started very late due to venue issues, let's just say. And we ended up with 95 people instead of 140 like we were counting on. And it looks like we may have lost a bit of money, maybe 1,000, maybe a little more. And you know what? It doesn't matter because we can handle that. And that is an accomplishment because 10 years ago, or worse yet, 20 years ago, if one of our events had costed that much out of organizers' pockets, that would be it. They would never try it again. Some of them would just walk away and go, I can't afford. I personally have lost money out of my own pocket for a party that I threw, and it was worth it, but you can't afford to do that very often, really. So yeah, I think the mere fact that we managed to persevere and get ourselves to the point where we're financially stable, registered nonprofit, and also the fact that we survived the pandemic, because there were, festivals and groups and teams and DJs and crews that did not survive the pandemic. 3 years of inactivity was just too much. Some of the bigger festivals had fixed costs that they were still paying and so on. We had virtually no fixed costs. We have a storage locker that we pay money for, and that's really our only ongoing cost between events. So the fact that we had to put it all on hold and also we could have come back in the summer of 2022 because by that point people were throwing festivals again, but we were feeling a bit leery about it. And then we found out we couldn't get the venue that we wanted. And we were just like, you know what, let's wait. So yeah, we didn't come back until last summer. So that's 3 years. Yeah. 3 summers of pandemic summer, 3 summers of no summer intention, but we're back, baby. And I'm pretty proud of that.
How easy do you think it is to kind of make this sort of work in Vancouver and the Sunshine Coast and Fraser Valley? I know you mentioned a little bit of like getting permits. To what extent does the city, the municipality help or not help with making this stuff happen?
Very good question. Well, I have two answers to that. One is that for the potlucks, we don't need no permit. That's obvious. We have done parties in the park where we bring a sound system, which technically you're supposed to have a permit for, but at Trout Lake Park, people do that all the time without permits, as long as you don't stay too late or go too loud. So we do that. Sometimes but the bigger events are actually at the moment both on the Sunshine Coast. And that means that we're dealing with a way different set of zonings. Things are more relaxed. They're not in the city at all. But another aspect to intention gatherings, multi-day events, is that they're retreats into the wilderness. So our favorite venue on the Sunshine Coast, Crystal Creek, is kind of a meditation retreat that also rents to ravers if they're the right kind of ravers. They do events, and they have their own permits in order, and we just rent the place and get liability insurance, but we don't actually have to get an event permit. And the winter events are in kids camps, Camp Elphinstone, Zajac Ranch, the one that you went to, Camp Squia. And again, we don't need an event permit to do those because the venue itself is permitted to do that. We just need stuff, including liability. But when you asked about the city of Vancouver, that reminds me, you're probably aware of the Earth Dance project. You know what
No.
Earth Dance is? This has been this was also started by some California hippies, believe it or not, and it's a global party towards peace. They will usually pick some very specific environmental or political issue to fundraise on, and then people throw raves in every major city all over the world, all on the same date. They're usually overlapping so that there is one particular time, which is 4 o'clock Vancouver time, I believe, where all of these events are happening at once. And supposedly every dance floor around the world starts to play the same track at the same time. It's called the Prayer for Peace. It's very non-denominational. It's awesome. And Earth Dance, unfortunately, is currently not happening in Vancouver anymore. The people who were organizing it moved on in various ways. But at one point, a lot of the people on the Earth Dance team were also from Intention Gathering. It wasn't an official Intention Gathering project at all, but in terms of the people and the ethos and the pool of DJs that we were pulling from, and even the gear that we borrowed from Intention occasionally, it kind of was a bit of a side project. And because that would happen in a public park and it was very loud, you definitely needed permits. And there were some years that was easy, and there was other years where it was nearly impossible. They always managed to get a permit, but you had to apply way in advance, and you sometimes couldn't get the venue you wanted. It depends on who is in charge of the park board at that point, because the park board are the ones that decide. And that it has gone up and down. And honestly, post-pandemic, I don't even know how easy it would be to get a permit to do Earth Dance. The larger corporate events that want to have beer gardens and security guards, they can still do things in public parks. You see that once in a while because they go through all the loops and they get permits and they pay a lot for them. But whether a group like Intention could get a permit remains to be seen. We haven't tried because generally we would rather go out in the woods.
If we're taking Intention Gathering as a rave, as a party,
Mm-hmm.
like, why is it important for it to be family friendly? Why is it important for there to be communal meals? Why is
Mm,
it important to have workshops, the eyes
mm.
market? And how did these things come about? Why create that part of the space?
Okay. Well, those things have been there right from the start, and they all have their reasons. Some of them I might just have to guess at because it just seems so normal. It's like riding a bike or breathing, and you forget, why are we doing this? Because it just seems normal. But well, communal meals, the ritual of breaking bread together is as old as humanity, and it is a place where we're all in one place at once, and it's just fun. Um, Keeping it kid friendly is good because as ravers get older, they tend to reproduce, and suddenly you have kids, and people shouldn't be barred from going to fun gatherings just because they have kids. They should feel that it's safe to bring the kids there. And it does keep a bit of a clamper on excessively rowdy or lewd or drunken behavior. Doesn't mean that we don't get lewd late at night when the kids are in bed, but during the day, we're at first glance, somebody might walk in and think that we were some kind of very weird church group, and then they look a little closer and be like, I don't know what these people are doing, but they seem really happy, and it also feels wholesome. The minute people see kids there, it feels wholesome, and on some levels, it is. Kids deserve to grow. Who kids of children of ravers deserve to grow up amongst ravers, and eventually, when they hit their teens, some of these kids are like, oh, that's my parents' values, and they start going to other parties. But not all of them. Some of them keep going through their tweens and their teens, and stay in the intention clan because it's what they've grown up with. It's normal. This is what adults do, but it's fun. And really, it's what anybody can do. So, yeah, the kids thing is there. The workshops, well, I mean, yeah, you can go to a rave and dance all night to great music, and there is nothing wrong with that. But if that's all there is, but when you come away from an event feeling like you learned something or had some deep connection with someone that wouldn't have happened on the dance floor, um, that's something. That's why all of the larger festivals have workshops now, and I don't want to brag, but we were on top of that long before Base Coast was. You know, we were doing that right from the start. It's always been part of our gathering is that during the day we're not just sleeping off whatever we did the night before. No, we're up and at 'em and doing fun things in the woods, and learning stuff is important. It makes it means you can come home from the weekend feeling like a better person as opposed to, well, I danced a lot, my legs are sore, but I'm essentially the same person. I just had fun. There's nothing wrong with that. But coming home feeling like you actually notched it up a little bit is a good feeling.
Yeah, it was interesting because I met someone, I can't remember his name, maybe Amar, and he was giving a talk and he built a farm and he was like, I
Mm-hmm.
came to intention some time ago and in this intention, I was like, I should make a community farm. And then years later, when I joined, he was like, now here's a presentation on like the farm that I made because I came to intention. And I thought it was really interesting how within this party or space dynamic, there's also the space that's created for kind of new ideas and stuff to come out of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that man's name is Amir Nuriman, and he is the founder, one of the founders of Abundance Farm. And the number of people who have either lived there or done the CSA community farming agreement and come out there on weekends, it's like a lot of people in the Lower Mainland, and they're ravers too. You know, they probably don't do it as much as they used to, but there have been dance oriented gatherings at Abundance Farm. I've known him for years, but I didn't realize that he had the idea while he was at Winter Intention. But it doesn't surprise me either to hear that. So.
I think so. I would check with
Yeah,
before I
it wouldn't surprise me. And the people that he co-founded with, he might have known through intention as well, now that I think of it. So yeah. Well, that's cool.
yeah, and there's also a continuation as well that I felt because after Winter Intention, there was this idea of continuing through like the potlucks, which
Hmm.
how often are they? Like once a month, maybe more than that?
Yeah, yeah. This is a relatively recent thing, I'll be honest, but like maybe in the last 3 years, we realized that we would have these two big gatherings a year, summer intention and winter intention. And other than that, some of us would see each other socially at normal raves or at house parties, but intention gathering as a official organized community wasn't doing anything. And gee, maybe we should have some potlucks or dance parties in somebody's house or something that's both. So it took a while to get off the ground, but the current status is that we do them once a month for about 10 months of the year. We don't try to do them in July or August because they're usually too busy, but in early July there usually is one anyhow because this is another way to continue it, and this is as old as the hills. The first weekend after winter intention or summer is called intention extension, and then we have an after party, and everybody who was there tries to get together somewhere. And the sometimes the intention extension is also a potluck. So yeah, July, there actually was one.
These are more closer ones, but I didn't ask the opening one, so I might go to the opening question. Let's start with the
Good.
opening question, like a long ways to listen to. So the opening question, which I didn't ask, was, uh, could you tell me about an interesting time or observation during your work in intention?
An interesting time or an observation during intention.
Yeah.
Like it could be anything.
It could be anything. It
All
could
right.
even be on the org team.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you one thing that popped into my mind not that long ago. Um, Intention 5, we were at Camp Elphinstone and it was snowing, which doesn't usually happen on the Sunshine Coast. And the people who organize workshops sometimes need a sound system because they're doing a yoga workshop or something that requires music. And they are supposed to tell the workshop coordinator what their needs are. And the workshop coordinator is supposed to tell the sound crew, by the way, at the following time on Saturday afternoon, we need to have sound in blah, blah building over there. And then we plan it out. That's what happens ideally. And we're a lot better at that than we used to be. But at Intention 5, I remember more than once being given about 20 or 30 minutes notice to set up a sound system with microphones in a different venue than the one where it currently was. And it was snowing out, and I would have people like helping me move gear through the snow really fast. And I loved it. Honestly, the fact that I was like bringing the sound and I'm the tech who's going to make your day better, and you're lucky that I know how to do this quickly. I don't know. I did. You're a sound tech, so yeah, it just tickled me. And then to go forward, summer intention, the one that you just missed, unfortunately. Andrew Kim was doing another one of his sound healings, and Nadia was the workshop coordinator, and she gave me about 3 hours notice. Oh, we need to get a generator and a sound system into that. It's kind of like a gazebo, but she didn't tell me it was the gazebo. She just told me it was for Andrew Kim's sound healing, and I assumed that was in the yurt because that's where it was last year. But I had like 2.5 hours to do it, and I found a couple of volunteers to help me move a generator and a big long cable, which took a bit of digging because I didn't know where the stage crew had seen them, and I loved it. And at one point, somebody was like, "Fish, you look like you're working really hard." And I'm like, "No, this isn't work. This is play. This is the shit that I do for fun. Yes, I could be doing something else right now, but running wires so that people can make music, this is what I do, right?" And then it turned out that it wasn't in the yurt, it was in the gazebo. So we had to move the generator and the wires. And I was just like, yeah, this is what I do. And yeah, that is easy. I didn't even consider that to be work. But there were times in the past when being on the sound crew was a lot of work. And that also my hearing is not as good as it used to be, and I have tinnitus and hearing loss. So I try to stay away from the sound system and just be on the dance floor with earplugs in. But when I'm given a chance to run wires, there I am. That's my story.
It's a good story. I was wondering what the observation was.
The observation was that some people have skills to offer intention that are such second nature to them that they don't feel like work. They feel like play. And doing this kind of stuff, people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did this, this, and this." And it's like, so yes, there was time involved, but these are things that I don't even consider hard, you know? Like I do most of the IT work for intention, and it's because I'm a web developer, and putting stuff together like that is just second nature. It's just easy. I mean, you can go onto the org team and learn new skills by doing things you've never done before, and that's cool too. And I did learn some stuff about sound systems being on the org team for sure, but it's also fun when you get a chance to volunteer and use a skill that you normally get paid for a higher cause, you know, because the intention is a higher cause.
Okay, how does the community already support the work that you do? And if there is one thing they could support you more on, what would that be?
The work that I do personally or the org team?
Let's go to the org team.
Yeah. Well, the thing that they could do the most is not be afraid to join the org team. The things that keep them away, up until about 6 years ago, there was a phase of at least 4 years where there was drama and infighting and differences of opinion on the org team. And I think that there's still echoes of that floating around, that, oh, if you join the org team, you have to deal with drama. That has not been the case for at least 6 years, maybe 7. And that might be one obstacle, that people just don't realize that things are way better now. The other obstacle, which is harder, is that they see some of the organizers working way more hours than they expected and getting burned out. And they're like, oh, I don't think I can join the org team. It sounds like too much work. But it's a catch-22, because the more people that are on the org team, the less work it is. So please don't be afraid to come and help us. And every year we put out multiple postings and try to convince people to join the org. And we always get a few, but we never get enough. Sometimes we're better off doing one-on-one recruiting. We will pick people and chat them up and say, look, I think you've got some skills. Would you like to help us? But yeah, if the community as a whole could do one thing, it would just be, don't be afraid to step up. And you can just pick a nice small role. You don't need to do what I did or what Dawn did or Lola. Just don't burn out, you know. Just pick something small and discreet and have some fun with it. And there you go.
Nice. Yeah. Once again, going back to that idea of doing.
It's a duocracy. Yeah.
Mm.
Because by helping with that particular aspect of the event, you now have the ability to shape it.
Yes. Looking back in your time at intention gathering and creating these environments for maybe a couple of decades now, what would you change? What would you keep?
Well, I'd like to say I wouldn't change a thing. Really. I mean, some of the best times of my life have been at intention. And yeah, it's an interesting question, but I wouldn't change anything. The only parts of it that haven't been fun have been when I've been juggling a day job with urgent web development, registration, promo. Sometimes that gets to be a bit much, and I have lost sleep over it. It's almost inevitable that I will show up at the gathering running a few nights of serious sleep debt, because I didn't have time to start packing till the last minute because I was too busy doing registration. That part isn't fun, but it's part of the process. And I I still feel like there's no life like it, and I don't think I would change it. My hope for the future is that after being on the org team for 22 years now, I guess that includes the 3 years off for the pandemic, but still 22 years. I would like to believe that the next time we do a gathering, I can just do website or just do registration and step way back and let the new people and the other old people do the job. That is my ideal, is to step back. Obviously, I'm still very deeply implanted in the community. I will be at the gathering, and having fun. And that will never change. But yeah, the excessive work that some organizers have to do, this is something we're always grappling with, is organizer burnout and how best to handle it.
What would you keep?
I'd keep everything else except the burnout. I would keep the good times on the dance floor. The great times on the dance floor. I would keep the meeting new people in a environment that is socially acceptable to meeting them in a very intimate way, if you know what I'm saying. I would keep the things that I've learned in workshops. I would keep the going out in the snow with a few people and getting high, because you can't smoke weed in the buildings, but just going for a walk in the woods middle of the day deep in the snow, it's super fun. I mean, winter intention has always been in the winter, and summer we've only done that about half as many times. But yeah, winter intention is magical. You're in a winter wonderland, especially Camp Elphinstone, but even the 2, 3 other camps we've used, it's still magical. You're in the woods and it's winter, and then you get to come inside and somebody's already made dinner and the dining center is already half full, and you don't have to do anything except wash your hands and sit down and eat, and it's glorious. Yeah, I wouldn't give that up.
Great. We have one final question. Thank you
Sure.
so much. This is one that's more of a broader question, which is, if there is something that we as facilitators should be paying attention to in terms of how we relate to people, what should that be?
As facilitators for what? Sorry, I think I'm missing something here.
Just facilitators as spaces, as
Oh,
people.
okay. I think the yeah, probably two things. One is that you do have to keep your eyes open for consent issues, because try as we might, there's always a chance that somebody at that gathering is making other people uncomfortable in a sexual way, or even just that big smelly hippie who insists on hugging you and doesn't seem to realize not to. And sometimes that stuff just, goes right past most people. But as a facilitator, you need to be sensitive to that, because it's going to be your job to talk to that person and try to convince them to chill out. And in the case of sexual consent issues, it can mean somebody being ejected from the venue if it's serious enough. But we have dealt with that, not very often, thankfully, but occasionally. The other thing is to be sensitive to the introverts, because you've thrown a festival that attracts people who want to meet other people and have fun in ways that are very much putting yourself out there. And if you've managed to get some introverts coming to your gathering for the first time, that was a huge step on their part. And they're still who they are. They're going to be lurking at the edge of the crowd and reluctant to talk to people and very shy. And it's good to reach out to those people and make sure that they're feeling integrated and part of what's going on, because they have taken a big risk by being here. They're not here because they're on transit or because it's their job. They're here because they chose to pay money to be here. And now they're feeling a little scared and unsure of their decision. Well, yeah, it helps to reassure those people that, yeah, it's fine. You're not the only new person here. You're not the only introvert here. And it's going to be fine. And in most cases, after 3 days of immersion, they're like much more comfortable with other people and with themselves.
Nice. What's next for intention gathering?
Well, continuing to do as we do. Our summer venue is still hopefully going to remain our summer venue, but for reasons that I don't want to get into, to do with permitting, basically, we may be forced to find another summer venue, and we know that that's a challenge, but we've had many good years at Crystal Creek, and possibly we'll have many more good years. If we're able to use that venue next summer, then there's no question about it. It's a magical place. We will just continue to do what we're doing. The winter venue is also up for question. The place that we used last winter, Camp Squia, it was only available because there's a large family group that usually books it over New Year's, and they were not booking it due to some family tragedy or something. That was the only reason we were able to use that camp. So we were doing everything we could to, make a good impression and build some relationship, but ultimately we may never get to use that venue again. There is a chance that we can get back into Camp Elphinstone, which would be awesome, but it wouldn't be over New Year's. The idea of doing winter intention any weekend other than New Year's sounds like heresy, but Elphinstone doesn't want to. They say that they're having a hard time finding staff to staff it over Christmas and New Year's, and that does kind of make sense. But they offered us the holiday weekend in February, which is called Family Day in Canada. So, and that's still winter. So we may end up doing a Family Day gathering instead. And it has been New Year's every year for 24 years now. So that's a little hard to get our heads around, but that's better than it not happening. So yeah, we have not one but two possible venue challenges, but we have got some new organizers who have been already looking at venues and addressing this since before summer intention. They were already searching for winter intention venues. It's been a while since we've had anybody that had the bandwidth or the foresight to do that, and that's great. So yeah, we had some this lovely couple from California who used to be part of the Rhythm Society. You should look that up. I'll send you a link. That's Mike and Sasha that I'm talking about, and they are now intention organizers and very deeply implanted in our community already in less than a year. And yeah, Mike's already doing a long range venue search. We also know that we're pretty darn resilient, and we are going to find a venue no matter what, and we're going to keep going no matter what, because this is what we do. And hopefully some of those new orgs will be ready to take over if John finally retires or if I finally retire. And I think they will. I think we're gonna keep going as long as we can and just spreading the love the way we do. I don't think anything about how we do it needs to change, because what we're doing is good. We just need less org burnout and another venue. But we'll find one.
That's great. Fish, thank you so much. Thanks for spending the time and coming to chat about intention.
Oh, dude, it was great. That was super fun. That was really fun. It's been a while since I've been interviewed, but obviously I don't have a problem talking. So you picked the right guy.
Perfect.